It shows us a form that we can use to submit, as well as all of our coffee drinks. Okay. Then further, I want to be able to delete a drink. So I'm already looking at creating a drink right there with a form, reading and then getting all the drinks on our page, and the D, deleting, right? And then we finally need the U, the update, which we'll get to toward the end. Update's usually a little bit more time consuming, but at least we can get C, R, and D finished in a rough, normal amount of time. So what I'm going to do is actually, in this case, I'm going to start at the front end and have my front end basically inform the rest of my system about how it needs to be set up. Personally, I like to start on the back end first, meaning I would start defining my database first, my tables, my ERD, forward engineering that, making a working database, testing my queries. If all queries work, then I would finally go to my Python server, spin that up, then I would finally create an HTML page to render. Today I'm going to do it the opposite. Today I'm going to start way up at the front end on the HTML, just build an HTML page. Then I'm going to have Python try to serve that HTML page. Once that happens, then I'm basically going to make sure every process works in my server, and finally then I'll create my backend my database that can actually support this application. Now I truly don't care where you guys start, all the way on the HTML or all the way in the database. What I would advise doing is not starting in the middle, because then you get confused. Then it becomes less clear about what the next step is. But I know if we're starting the way we are today with the HTML, as soon as this is working, I get my server to serve it. As soon as that's working, I make sure the process function's working. As soon as those functions are all working, then I go to my database. And it's easier to follow kind of a train of thought. Versus if I start with spinning up a server, then okay, I need to make HTML here. I also need to make a database that works here. I have a lot more going on that I can't control. So build in one direction, be it front to back or back to front, and also build in a testable way, making sure that every step of the way we're not implementing chunks of code without testing them, because that's when you get errors or chains of errors, which can really suck. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to open up my terminal, and I'm going to navigate to my desktop, and I have a Flask projects folder, so CD there. Now, I don't currently have a virtual environment in this directory. You don't need one per project, but I can't remember if I have a regular Flask environment, so I'm just going to go ahead and create a new environment. Now, you don't have to do this per project, but if you are missing your environment, then you can create a new one. It's okay. Virtual env, and we'll say Python equals Python 3. And in this way, I'm creating an environment that will refer to the keyword Python, and it will know Python is Python 3. That's all I've done. And now I'm going to activate that. So source bin activate, and I can just double check to make sure my Python version is correct. 3.6, we're looking good. And I can also see my empty list of packages, right? Just the 3 packages there. So what do I definitely need? Flask, right? We need to install Flask. We actually already have Python. We need to install Flask. Oops. And I wrote Python because I was saying Python. Flask is what we wanted. Okay. Is there anything else we need in terms of the database? Is it PyMySQL, right? Yeah, we needed the PyMySQL. Pip install PyMySQL. And where can we find this information if we forgot what we needed to install in order to create a Flask application with a database? Yeah. Go back to the platform, right? Refer back to your notes. If you guys aren't consistently checking the previous slides when you're working on an assignment, you're doing it wrong. I can guarantee 90% of your answers, 90% of the questions would be answered by those previous slides. And I know some of you aren't reading it, and I would really advise reading the material, because you're not going to get programming just by winging it. You're going to get programming by knowing where your documentation lies. Now, of course, we build in gaps, right? So there's some that's missing, and that's when you actually have to go and Google things. But I want you guys to challenge yourselves today when you're working with one another to try as hard as you can to solve these problems by looking at our documentation or finding Flask's documentation to solve these issues. So let's go down to Flask, and we can see in the Flask MySQL section, there's a couple things to be aware of. It's going to talk to us about the workbench again. It's also going to tell us how we could connect to a database. Now you'll notice PyMySQL is part of a file that we're going to start implementing in all of our Flask database projects. I say all of them, mainly just the ones we're doing today. Right? Django does things differently. But what we will need to do is, after we install PyMySQL to pip, which we've already done, we need this MySQL connection.py file in our project. But that's kind of the server, right? I'm not even talking about the app. We're going to start with just the HTML first. So let's go back. Now that my environment's created properly, let's go ahead and make a directory called coffee run. And that's going to be my project. So cd coffee run. And right now I'm just going to make a place where I can test to see if an HTML file is working properly. So where should I make it? Should I just put it right here, or should I make a directory for it?
Directory.
Yeah, what should I call that directory? Yeah, right. Make directory templates, right? Plural. And I'll cd templates, and why don't we just create an index.html file? And I can actually cd up a level and open everything in this directory in code. Code dot. Nice little shortcut. That will open my whole working folder in VS Code. And right now I don't have a server, I don't have anything else going on other than this templates folder with a single index.html. So let's start designing this beautiful page. I can get rid of this. I'm not going to use that for now. And ultimately we're just going to say coffee run. Okay, so we talked about two things on this page, right? A form as well as a table for all of the orders thus far, right? Okay, so let's start with our form. Form action. Well, I'm not going to really deal with that right now. I'm not thinking about the server. I'm just thinking about the HTML. Little p tag, and then let's do input, type text. Name should be user, friend, I don't know, whatever.
A.
What? A? No, not A. Go home. Not A. Anything but A. Let's say
B.
no. Go home, you too. Kicking you both out of here. Can I buy a vowel? E. All right, so first name, and then let's put a drink, right? So this is not going to be that beautiful, but at least we have a form that has a couple things. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Okay, and add order. So I've got a form that has a couple inputs, first name and drink, and then we have an add order button. All right, so let's just get this opened up just via our regular browser, right? So desktop, and we'll go into Flask projects, November, coffee run, templates, index.html, and we can see my gorgeous design chops, right? There we go. So nice and beautiful. All right, I'm going for that whole minimalist look right here. You know, if you guys want to put some CSS in there, spruce things up a bit, I encourage that. You know, maybe try something like Bootstrap if you guys haven't tried that today, because you're going to just be working on one big application today and replicating what we're doing right now. But ultimately, we have a single form. We also talked about a table, right? Okay, so let's go back to the HTML. Let's put an H3, all orders, and let's put a table, and let's put a TH, and in our TH, actually let's make a TR first, and inside of here, let's put a single TH, and we'll say first name, another TH, drink. All right, way more beautiful now. And then let's create a couple TRs. Now, ultimately, this is going to be data from a database, but in terms of kind of spacing things out on my page and kind of seeing how the general flow will work, it might make sense at this point to start putting single data points, just dummy data, right? Just so I can express what it will look like. So TD, we have Justin, and TD, we have black coffee. Okay, so that's one. And then, let's see, what else do we have? Shot of espresso. Another one?
With a shot.
Oh, they call that a red eye. All right, and then we'll have Patrick, black coffee. Shazay, what's your drink? You do black tea, right?
Yeah, Scottish breakfast tea.
Scottish breakfast tea. That's too much to write. What?
The strongest tea.
Ah, oh, strongest. Did you say Scottish or strongest?
No, I said Scottish.
Oh, you did? Okay, gotcha. That is the strongest. Okay, there you go. Irish whiskey. Yeah, there we go. So, Justin gets a red eye, I get a black coffee, Shazay gets a Scottish black tea. Right, this is not database data, but now we can start to see where it would be expressed, where it would be shown. So, what I would also want, right, we also talked about the ability to maybe delete these things. So I can create a TH called like actions. You know, and actions might be a link for delete and eventually a link for update. So for each action or for each user thus far, let's do this. Let's say we have another TD, That's an A tag, not going anywhere, and it simply says delete. And delete, delete, delete. Right. If you want to look real cool in front of your friends, Alt, as you click, would allow you to do multiple line edits. So, yeah, your friends will think that's awesome. My friends are like, you're so cool, man. How do you type on multiple lines? So, we have a single dummy HTML page, right? Now, our HTML will inform our system about what needs to happen. So I'm starting to consider, what will my database need to look like to support this? First of all, how many tables am I going to have in my database?
3.
What 3 tables are we going to have?
First name, drink, and app.
Now, those are 3 separate tables or 3 columns in one table?
Oh no, that's one table.
What's the table going to be called?
Order.
Orders? Yeah, orders or drinks. Orders works. I think orders is good. We're already using that term. So orders, and what columns will exist in orders?
First name, drink, and app.
First name, drink. Now actions. ID, first name, drink, ID for sure. Does a delete link need to be in the database? A delete link is just a delete link, right? So the things I'm gonna do to this entity, does it have to be in the database? Actions? No, not really, right?
So ID, first name, and drink.
ID, first name, drink, and any identifying information, that we need for that drink or that order. But the actions we're about to do with it, well, that's just another query. Nothing needs to be in the database to facilitate that. So if I was diagramming, which I would be doing at this point, okay, I've got a single table called orders, and it's going to have an ID, a first name, and a drink itself. And that seems, and a created at and updated at. Of course, we want those at all times. Okay, so we're getting there. We're still not going to work on the database all the way till the end. We'll see how far we can get without actually using a database, because there's a lot of things to test until that point in time. What should we test next? What should we try to attempt next?
To add another.
Well, that won't even work until we have a database, right? So we're starting all the way up at the front end with the HTML. What would be the next thing we test? We have an HTML page done. Should we try to... Yeah. Should we try to serve that HTML? Yeah, right? And even before serving the HTML, I might just test that my Python server is working. So let's try that. Let's spin up a Python server, and let's see if we can get that to work. Server.py, and if I go back to my editor, I can see server py. And how do I start this again? I've forgotten. From Flask, import Flask. Okay, so I've got Flask. And then what's the next line? App equals Flask. Under name. This should be second nature, guys. You've spun up a couple servers at this point. We got to know this. Yeah, we could go ahead and do that right now. Add app.route. And what route should we make, Shazay?
The slash.
Yeah, index. We want our user to land somewhere. Okay, then what's next?
Def.
Def.
Index.
Cool. And what should we do here? Return. And see, I like to, again, build in a testable manner. I could go ahead and try to return render template right now and try to go that whole process of rendering the page up. But before I'm going to do that, I'm just going to return a hello from server. A simple string, right? Less that can break at a time, right? I can just test this, and when this is working, then I can basically ensure that I can then try to do the next thing. And I'm just going to do the if dunder name equals dunder main, and we'll say app.run debug debuff. Debug equals true. So this is a working server. It will not serve my page, but we can at least test that it's awake and running and can accept requests. How do I run it? Python server.py. Again, you can tab to autocomplete to finish it. Spinning this up, let's go to local 5000, and I'll see that nice message. Hello from server. Perfect. So we tested that our server works. Now let's test that we can render a page. Build in a testable way. So what do I need to do to try to render index.html?
Import render template.
Import render template. We got to do that first. Okay. Once I have import render template, then I do what? Someone mentioned return. Return render template given what? Index.html. All right. Let's see if it works. And it just served up our HTML page, going from front end to back end, right? Now we have our server serving up a single page, and our form submission is a little wonky, so we're going to have to figure that out. But conceptually, this is a question too. It looks like we're done with index right now. But did we say this page was going to have any database information displayed?
Not at the beginning.
Ultimately, will it?
Yes.
It will display what?
The orders.
All of the orders, right? So who is going to be in charge, or what function will be in charge of getting all the orders and sending them to a page to be rendered?
The form.
Not the form function. It's actually going to be the responsibility of the person that's rendering the page, right? If I'm saying, hey, you go paint a picture, you need to get certain data to paint that picture, right? And in this sense, we're saying index.html needs to render the page that shows all these drinks. It also needs to be in charge of getting all those drinks. So I'll leave a little note for myself. Get all drinks from DB, send to render template, right? So what we can do is we can test, we can test sending data up, right? So how would I send, if I had this variable, anum equals 42, how would I send this to my template to be shown?
After index
After index.html, I do what?
anum equals anum.
Anum equals anum, that'll work, right? A number equals a number. And how would I express that here? Because I'm not going to see it if I refresh.
Double curly brackets anum.
Double curly brackets anum. Let's see if you know what you're talking about. Looks good, right? Perfect. So am I limited in what I can send to that page? Can I just send a single integer, or can I send maybe a list or a list of dictionaries?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we'll be doing. When we make the query, when we get that back from the database, it will actually be a list of dictionaries in Python. I will send that up. I will send it to the template to be rendered. Just like I have a variable here and I sent it up, I will do almost the same exact thing with my list of dictionaries and send them up. But then instead of simply just doing double double curlies, I'll probably run a for loop, right? And that's what we have to get used to, is running for loops in our templates that'll express our data. So let's take that out for a second. Let's get back here. We have a clear idea of what we want to accomplish. We can take out this anum for now. We don't need that. But we will have to revisit this at some point, right? In order to go back through, in order to make sure we have our data and have sent it there properly. Any questions so far about what we've done? Single HTML page so far. Tested that it worked. Built a server. Tested that it worked. Rendered the page. Tested that that worked. Test, test, test. Okay, so what's the next thing based on our current system? Based on the server now. We're not going to go to the database yet. We're not going to do that yet. What's the next thing we should test in terms of this application? Which button?
Order, add order.
Yeah, test that the form is being submitted properly, right? That's a good idea. So how can I get that started? First of all, let's check to see where the form is submitting right now. Where is it submitting to? Nowhere. So where should we submit it? /submit or /process. I'm going to call it /add drink. We can make it whatever we want. Via a post method. Method is post. Notice that it's singular on the HTML and it's plural in your server. So you're saying the method for this is post. The methods that I will be expecting in my server will be post. Methods versus method. Okay, so you're telling me that I can just submit to this add drink via a post request. And then when I do that, what's that? What will happen right now if I try to submit the form? Yeah, right? Not found. The URL add drink, it made the right request. It just didn't find it. So I need to do what? What's the next step?
Create that.
Create the HTML? Does this have anything to do with HTML?
Create that method.
The route, right? The route and the method attached, yeah. So let's go ahead and start that. How would I create a new route? Add app.route. Okay, what's the route going to be?
/process or add drink.
What did I call it? Add drink. So that's what it's called. We're sending the form here. We're sending the form there. This is someone else we're delegating the task to. Do I have to do anything special here if I'm sending a post request? Methods equals a list that contains just post. I'm saying I'm facilitating or allowing a post request to go here. By default, it's almost as if there is a methods equals get here. We don't have to put that because Flask is assuming, hey, that's probably what you want to do at the outset. But to do anything else, put, post, patch, delete, You have to specify methods equals post. And you can have multiple methods inside of this list, but it's easiest for now to just do singular methods for the different requests you're making. Okay, now what do I write? Def.
Let's add drink.
Yeah, whatever the heck we want to call it. Def add drink. Okay. Hey guys. All right. Def add drink. I was being nice because I'm recorded right now. I can't tell him to shut up. Oh no, I still said it. All right. Def add drink. What should I do here to test to see if the form got submitted properly? Return. I'll return something, but what should we return? After I process something, what should I do next? Redirect. We want to redirect a user to another location in our system, right? And I'm saying return. We're not going to return the drink itself because it has to be an HTTP response. It has to be something that we're, facilitating in our system. But I can return redirect. And where should I redirect? Back to index, right? Because index is already in charge of a couple of things. Right now it's just rendering the page, but index will ultimately be in charge of getting the most recent things from the database. So after this form adds to DB, then it will be in charge, or index will be in charge of getting all the things. It's never ever like we're working in a bakery, right? And me and Olivia are working in the bakery. I'm not taking this new loaf of bread and handing it to her, right? I am saying I am taking this bread as the process route and I'm putting it in a cabinet somewhere. Then later, when someone else needs it, they go and get it out of the cabinet. It's never ever a function handing it directly to the other function. It's we're putting it in this central location, which is the database. And later, when you need all of the bread, or you need a single bread, or you need to update a bread, you get it from the database. We all get that bread, right? Cool? That's what all the hip kids say now? Okay. So, adds to the database, but I can test this by doing what? You expressed it.
You need to import redirect.
We do need to import redirect. That would have been an error, right? And then what should I do here to test that the form submitted properly? Print what?
Add drink.
Request?
You get a request of it.
Yeah, print request.form. And the request for us expresses basically the information about the user. What they wanted, what path they accessed, what information they sent along with their request. It's an HTTP request. So now you'll notice we have Flask, render template, redirect, and request up here, right? Okay. Printing the request form and then redirecting back home. So when I submit my form, it's honestly not going to look like a whole lot happens. I'm going to see if I submit this with Justin and the drink is a mocha, I'm just going to see the page flash, right? It was a redirect. It hit the process, it kicked it back. It hits the process, it kicks it back. But I can check my terminal and I can see, hey, I've got my dictionary right there. We have first name Justin, and then the drink is mocha. Cool? Any questions about the form submission process? This should be something that we can handle at this point. It's something we're going to see a lot of, submitting forms. And the typical way to use a form is to just redirect when we're finished with it, right? To redirect when that process is complete. Okay, cool. So now we have a way to have a single page rendered, to have a form submit, and ultimately that's kind of all that we've got so far, all that we can really design at this point in time. The delete is really a test on the database to see if it works. The create is really now just a test to see if it works in the database. So at this point, we can start to consider our real database. This is where things are going to get real weird. This is now when we actually open MySQL Workbench. And this is when we actually get into the Workbench and create a new model. And we will create a model per project, essentially. So I'll call this Coffee November, and I'll add a diagram. Now, Jake, how many tables did we have? One table, and we called it?
Orders.
Orders. Perfect. And everyone, what were the three columns we expressed?
Well, ID is automatically.
ID, we need ID for certain. What else do we want? First name, varchar 45, I think that's appropriate. What else do we need? Drink. Varchar 45, I think is appropriate. Now, what should we put on every table regardless?
Updated or created at.
Exactly. But it's way cooler if you say created at, updated at. All right, created at, updated at, oops, as date times. So we have an ID for an order. We have a first name, the user. We have a drink, the actual drink, the created at and updated at, both expressed as date times. Anyone see any problems with this table?
Put the now stuff automatic default expression.
In the actual, and we can do that there, or we can actually just do it in the query. We'll probably just do it in the query because there's not, you wouldn't always want it to be that way sometimes, depending on your application. But yeah, you could do that. What do I do to make this into a working database? Forward engineer, right? This is just a diagram. This is just me drawing shapes up until I forward engineer. Forward engineer takes this. It says, what code does this represent? I'll write that code in SQL and I will execute it for you. That's what the workbench does for us. So let's see if the forward engineer will work nice today. No. So my process is a little bit different because there's a known bug on the Mac that forward engineer doesn't work. It's actually working on the new model, so I think I just need to update this, but it works. But for me at least, if your forward engineer does nothing, then you can say synchronize model, and it's just another way to get around forward engineering. But for everyone, for the most part, forward engineer should work. If it doesn't work, come talk to me. All right, so for me, I just have to click through this, root, click through, okay, continue. This is the schema that I want to synchronize. And creating this, executing, okay, close. Going back to my actual connection, and I can see Coffee November as a usable database now. So I can test it with a select statement. Select all from orders. Orfers.
I have a question.
What's up?
You know on your homepage?
Yes.
You went to like Dojo Bro?
Uh-huh.
I only have one of those, and it has all my examples, all the homeworks that I've done.
Yeah.
Is that fine?
That's okay. Yeah, that's just a connection, so that's fine. Yeah, you can still have as many database in that connection as you want. Ultimately, the databases exist in the SQL server that's running. So this is that's just your connection file between here and there. That's all. Yeah, that should be fine. So select all from orfers or orders, right? Will allow me to get all of my drinks. So that's my read, right? Fantastic. I've just tested a query to make sure that query works. What do you think I'll do with this eventually? I'll put it in Flask. It makes way more sense to test queries here than it does in your working server, right? Because in your working server, many things can break. In here, one thing will break, and it's the one query that you just wrote, and that's all you have to deal with, right? So not a big deal. How would I create a drink? Insert into orders, parentheses, first name, drink,
ID.
created at,
That.
updated at, first name, drink, created at, updated at, values being what? What drink are we making right now? Ben, what do you like? Never heard of it. Okay. Now, you're too slow. Get on my level. All right. Insert into orders. First name, drink, created, updated at, values Ben, now, right? So nows are just a little function that'll run for us. To created at will be this moment in time. Updated at will be this moment in time. So let's make this drink. Okay. Now we'll make a drink for Kevin. Kevin, what do you like, Kevin? Huh? Is it like
Yeah, it's very similar.
Okay, nice.
Just add an H in the front.
There you go. Just a little bit of extra H in there. You're good.
Yeah.
All right. So we just created a couple drinks. Let's see if we can select our drinks. So our database is working properly, right? Ben likes a Kevin likes a huh. Maybe someone here likes normal coffee. I don't know. All right.
Mocha.
Mocha. There we go. That's normal. Okay, Mice is getting a mocha.
So that comes from
Mocha. I like it. So Mice is getting his mocha, right? Cool. And again, selecting all from orders, and we can see Mice's mocha. So I have tested my database, at least for the C and the R. Maybe we could test an update while we're at it, right? Okay, update orders, right? Set first name equal to Bob, where ID equals 1, right? Ben, you're now Bob. Sorry. All right. No, actually, Ben will fix this. What's your favorite drink, Ben, for real?
Mocha.
It is a mocha. Okay. That's already used up. Whatever. That's fine. All right. Update orders. Set drink equal to mocha where the ID is what? Updating by ID. And we can see that, hey, it looks like it worked. Going back here, and we can say Ben now likes mocha, right? So we've got our read, we've got our create, we've got our update. What are we missing?
Delete.
Destroy.
Delete or destroy, way cooler. Good job. Delete from
Users.
orders or users?
Users.
Where what? Where ID equals 2. Let's delete Kevin's drink. Right? Delete from orders where ID is 2. And we can see that the query ran. Let's select all from orders, and we'll see we have now 1 and 3. Sorry, dude. Get a better drink. Huh, it's whack. It's discontinued. All right, so we just tested all 4 CRUD operations, right, in terms of what this application will need. We've got a create statement, right? We're creating it with the first name and a drink every time. Created and updated that will be provided by us. We've got an update function, right, that would basically allow us to change this. I'm not sure if we'll get to implementing it in the time frame here. We'll try. We've got a delete. Deletes are always super easy. Just delete this thing by ID is mostly what we do, but we can delete by anything if we want. And we've got a read. Select all from drinks, right? So now we can essentially use that database to support our system. So we've tested our HTML. We tested our server to make sure that a couple things happen, that we can render a page, that we can submit a form properly, and that the redirect cycle is working properly. Every action in our system, other than delete, everything expressed by the HTML page kind of works right now, other than the database implementation. So here's where things are going to get a little crazy. And this is why I'm going to pair you up with someone. This is why today is going to be a big push to complete this on your own, or just with that other individual. Here's where, sorry, do you have a question?
It doesn't update the ID, right?
It does not update the ID. You pretty much want your IDs to remain the same always. Oh, and do you mean the delete didn't update the ID?
Delete updated to 2.
Yeah, because it deleted 2, so now we don't have to anymore.
Yeah. And that's how you want it, because if you imagine you have 15 tables, and some of them are related. Suddenly mice is gone. You don't want the IDs to shift, because if they shifted, Olivia would be related to this drink that she doesn't like, or Jake, or Jason, so on and so forth. So pretty much in the majority of database software, you'll see the IDs remain static, even when you delete things in between.
So
Yeah.
once it's assigned, that's
Once it's assigned, that's it. And you want it to, for the most part, work that way. Now you can add your own internal ID, you can do things like that too, but you don't have to. All right, so let's start to kind of, bring these two together. So what we will need to do is create a new file called mysqlconnection.py. Grab the mysqlconnection.py file, or create that. You only need to create this one time or copy this one time, and then you can use this same version everywhere in every application you make. But for any Flask app that you'll make that uses the MySQL database, you will have to copy-paste this file. Now guys, a little caveat, don't use this button.
Yeah, the spacing.
The spacing gets a little wacky, and sometimes it even puts the word copy there. It's a little bug. We're trying to fix it. Just don't use that button. I would just grab all the text and copy it like normal. So copy, and back here in the MySQL connection .py file, save it. You're not going to be required to write this file. And in fact, if you look up the PyMySQL library, you'll see that they provide this general boilerplate file. What this is it's a connection between my server and the MySQL server that's running. And if you look at it, it's really not that bad. It's a lot to digest. But we have a class called the connection, MySQL connection. In the init method, we take in a database name, and we're basically just telling it to, hey, use PyMySQL to connect to my database. On localhost, user root, password root. If you don't know these passwords, please talk to me immediately today. Let's get that resolved. I think I fixed everyone yesterday who didn't, or fixed everyone's computers that didn't know their password. So root should be the majority of you. After the init method runs, we really see one real method, queryDB. And we can query the DB, which will take in a query, and data. Now, data is an optional dictionary. But all that this will do is it'll basically say, hey, I'm going to join these two things, that query with the optional data. I'm going to join those two things, and I'm going to run that query by executing the query. And that's a PyMySQL feature or method that exists. When it gets the data back, it essentially tries to package it up, or the PyMySQL more so packages it up as a list of dictionaries for us. So again, you're not going to be required to write this, but you will be required to copy-paste it into every Flask app that's using MySQL. Okay? So once we have this, we'll actually import just this into our application. because this is what would allow us to create a connection to the DB. This returns an instance of a database connection. Okay? So what we'll do is, back in our server, we'll say from MySQL connection, which is the file name, from MySQL connection import, and we're going to import just this method, connect to MySQL. Make sure our syntax is right. Connect, capital T, capital M, capital SQL, TM SQL. And what I'm going to do right off the bat, just to make sure I've got it, is I'm going to actually print the connect to MySQL. Nothing will happen. I should see a reference in memory if it worked properly. And right there, when the server restarted, I can actually see that connect to MySQL, and it is a function. Okay? So what this function will do for us is when we call it, it will give us back an actual connection object to the database that we can use to run queries. We're instantiating a class. That's it. It's just a class that has a ton of methods that we didn't write. Well, some of these methods are the ability to run queries. So we're going to use this object that we get back in order to run our queries. Everyone follow me so far? This file is the glue. This is what you need. So copy paste this into your project at the same level as your server, call it MySQL connection, and then from that file, from MySQL connection, import connect to MySQL. If I type this wrong in the same way, right? Or just type it right. Type it right and then write that. Either way, you weirdos, whatever you guys want to do. But when we have this, let's take out this print and let's try something. We have a couple drinks in our database, right? Now, the database does not live in the MySQL workbench. It does not live in the Python server. The database just lives in another section of my computer, the MySQL server that's actually running. So in that sense, be it my workbench or the application that's communicating with it, it's the same one database. So if I was to try to query, select all from orders, I can do that. And I can get these orders printed out in my Python server right now. So let's do that. So get all drinks from DB. We can do something like this. MySQL equals the connect to MySQL method, and we're going to send it the name of our DB. The name of our DB is Coffee Nov. Coffee November. So I have a connection. This now is an instance of that class. Let's print it out first. Print MySQL. Again, testable, 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 right? We're not doing anything with it. We're just printing it. Let's check that out, see if it actually printed out. I'll actually go to index first to see if it worked. Didn't blow up, which is always good. And I see a MySQL connection object. Okay, well, if you remember, MySQL connection is actually the name of the class. So it is an instance of the class. And as an instance of the class, it has this nice little query DB method, right? So check this out. MySQL dot query underscore DB. Does anyone have a wild guess as to what I'm about to put inside of this function?
Select.
My select statement. Select all. It's just a query. I'm saying MySQL, you're that little connector, you're that little object that can run queries. Here's a query.
Do
Big-
every query works? The all CRUD queries?
Any query that'll run in SQL will run right here. Any query. Because it's just running SQL code under the hood. So, if I say, which is Kevin's favorite drink, or actually, which is Ben's favorite drink, right? Let's print, Let's print, and see what happens. Does anyone have a guess as to what might be?
It's a dictionary.
List.
List, dictionary, what'd you have?
It doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist?
Empty list.
Well, I'm just saying some variable, right? Not necessarily. I'm just saying, what is
okay.
what is this query? Select all from orders, right? I'm saying run this query. Then I'm going to catch whatever you send back to me in a variable. So we can just guess. What do you think they're going to send back to me?
Empty.
I told them to give me all the orders. Are they going to send me nothing in return? Let's see. Let's.
Is it like it's looking for us?
I don't think it has any relation to let's call this variable something else. Whatever. And let's just print that thing. I'm not going to type it out again. I'm just saying whatever gets returned from this thing, I'm telling this thing to query the database to give me every drink in the database.
Everything.
Right? Everything that's coming back is going to be stored in this variable. And this variable is what we can print out to see. everything from the database. And notice right here what I get. This is what, Ben?
List.
A list of what? Justin?
Names and drinks.
Yeah, Talene, right? Names and drinks. It's a list of dictionaries. Each dictionary expressing what? A single drink, right? So we have a list where we see ID is 1, first name's Ben, drink is mocha, created, updated, out, etc. Then we see Mice's drink. Let's try to add one more drink into our system. Talene, what do you like? Black coffee?
All dark coffee.
Tall, dark roast. Oh my God. All right, let's run that query. Okay, Talene has a coffee. Let's select all of our orders. We see Talene is now added into the database. Let's refresh our index page and see if that printed out. And we can see Talene's drink added into this list. Cool? Pretty cool, right? Okay, so what the heck should we call this variable and not so a thing is less to do, I guess. What should we call it? What is it really?
Orders. All orders.
All orders. Orders are all orders. I usually like to use all to distinguish from the order or something like that. So we could print all orders, but really, what was the next step?
Sent to render check.
And how do we do that?
Render check. All orders.
All orders. That's it?
That HTML.
No, equals all orders.
Equals all orders. Remember, front-end variable name, HTML variable equals some value. The value is all the orders that we got from our database. Everyone with me so far? Small steps. You do not build this entire thing at once,
What's our project?
right?
What's our project?
Your project is to make something just like this, except for pets.
Pens.
Pets. Pens? You can do pens, I don't care. Whatever. Tell you what, you and your partner come up with whatever the heck theme you want. Just make sure it has at least 2 fields, right? 2 columns. Well, ID as well. So 3 columns, including ID. Make whatever you want, right?
20 minutes.
No. This is going to be a lot of the day today. But I would say don't do relations just yet. Keep it to 1 table for now, okay? All right, so we have all of our orders. We've sent them all to the page. Now, how do I express it up here again? Well, let's look at all orders, right? Let's see how ugly that is. Vary. Okay, so that's not going to work. I can't just dump the list of dictionaries there. But as a list of dictionaries, what can I do with it? I can do a for loop. So let's check this out. We have a table row here where there's a first name, a drink, and actions. And then we have 3 of these things, which are ultimately just repeated versions of one thing. That's one thing to describe a user's first name, a user's drink, and a delete action, right? Let's dump 2 of these for a second. Let's consider how we would do a for loop. For drink in, or for order in all orders. And let's throw in end for right here. How many drinks are in all orders right now?
3.
1.
1 or 3?
Oh,
How many drinks are in all orders right now?
Just 1.
How easy.
1 column.
How many did we just print out? How many drinks are in all orders right now?
3 orders.
3 drinks, 3 orders, right? Yeah, we have 3 orders. So if I said for order in all orders, generate this table row that's expressing just and red eye, how many of these do I expect to see?
4 or 3.
As many as the orders I had, right? So 3. So let's check it out. If we see it 3 times, okay, well, we know our loop's working properly. But Justin, as much as we all like you, I don't want to see you this many times on my page, right? We want this to be variable data. So this is where it gets real weird. I can use the doubles to access values, right? What if I accessed order? Okay, well then I see Ben, Ben's whole order, Mice's whole order, and Talene's whole order. But here, did I want the whole order, or did I want simply what?
Just the first name.
Okay, well this is what data type?
First name.
This is what data type? This structure denoted by opening and closing curly brackets.
Dictionary.
So how can I access the name?
Bracket.
Bracket. Right? We went from all of the orders. We tested, we saw that they were there. Fantastic. We went to just presenting every single order. Okay, fantastic, that worked. Then we went to presenting every single order and their first name. There's a very specific reason that we did it in that order. You want to see why? Let's spell this improperly. Let's imagine that we went all the way down here and went all the way into, okay, I'm just going to try to get this first name first and see if my data is there on the page. Oh, shoot, I don't have any data on my page. I don't know what's broken right now, right? But instead of just wondering what's wrong, we went from known to unknown, right? We worked from big to small, and we made it work properly in that order. So order first name. So who has a wild guess as to what I can put right here?
Curly brackets, order, bracket, drink.
Order, drink. And I can see the individual drinks we have, right? Pretty cool, right? Now, one important thing to remember is this order is just a new variable to describe each thing in the orders individually, right? For element and array, for order and all orders, you can do things like that in Python, right? So I could even call this O. Will this display anything for me right now? Why not?
Because these are changed the order to O.
Exactly. This is the same reference we were just talking about, right? So I got to say O first drink, O drink, in order for it to still express our data. If it was not that way, then I'm seeing a big old fat error. Let's look at this for a second. Order is undefined. I'm getting a Jinja exception, so Jinja should have me considering that it's in my server or in my template. It involves the server, but I would say Jinja error. Jinja is the templating engine. So if I see Jinja exception, assume that it has something to do with what you were doing in your HTML file. It could be the server and that the server didn't send any data. That's a possibility. But if I see Jinja, I'm going to start looking at my HTML first and kind of try to figure that out. Okay. And, okay, so this is where it was in my server. It sent up all orders. Okay. And let's see what else we find. Oh, okay, here we go. Right here, order is undefined. And I can see that there's the issue there, that it's still called order, right? So changing that back to order. But again, this could be, you know, queue, right? And we can just make these all queue. It does not relate to the database. It does not relate to what we called our table. It does not relate to anything like that. It just relates to what we call this variable right now in this moment. The way I try to keep myself from going insane is by usually doing for singular thing in plural name. And that keeps things nice and clean. But you guys can be weird, do whatever you want. I don't care. As long as it makes sense to you. Cool. All right. So we have orders. Now let's test what? Let's test the big thing. So we got all of our drinks from the database. We can send them to a page. We pretty much have a good portion of this done. We can see all of our drinks now. What's the next biggest feature here?
Adding.
Yeah, heck yeah. So if I told you that I have to run this line of code in any function that will contact my database, will this line of code be necessary in the add drink function? Why?
Because it has the drinks in the table.
Well, is it going to be getting the drinks from the table, or is it going to be inserting something?
It's going to be inserting.
Yeah, but ultimately it's an interaction with the database, right? Yeah, so that's exactly why we need it. So we still need it there. Don't want to take it away. But adds to DB basically means I need to reconnect to MySQL. I need to get a new instance.
So every time you're connecting.
Yes. The reason being, it used to be, this entire script used to be written in a way where you could write this line one time at the top of your project and have that active. But when this is deployed, that single connection gets stale from time to time, and then it will break. So after a certain period of time, that connection just breaks, and there's no new way to spin it up. You would have to restart your server, which when you're deployed is not the most fun. So instead of that, what we've done is we've kind of changed the script a little bit to where every time a query finishes, it actually closes the connection, which allows you to then reestablish the connection. Every single time you're going to run a query, put this line of code just before that query, okay? If you run 2 queries in a function, how many times do you need to put this? Twice. If you run 1,000 queries in a function, 1,000 times. Same thing, right?
Is that for like when more than one users are connecting to a website or a database? Mismatched?
It should have still been the same connection to the database. It was more just that MySQL had this issue with a connection being open for that long. If it just was sitting open, it just broke after a while. So it was a recent change to something that they did, so we counteracted it with this fix. You know, which is kind of wacky, but it's necessary. So a select statement, guys, is actually pretty simple. We can just select. But an insert statement is going to be a little bit more confusing, right? Because if I look at the insert statement, And this is why we test it out ahead of time, because, hey, I know as a matter of fact, this is my whole insert statement that I need, right? If I look at this, and I consider that I had the request.form, right, which had information. When Justin submits the form, it'll be different than when Jose submits the form, that'll be different than when Alex submits the form, that'll be different, right? So if I consider my query, is this query going to be the same exact values every single time? It's going to be variable information, right? So when you're using variables in these queries, there's a pretty specific way to do it, and it looks a little funny. But instead of just being able to run a single query that's static every time, that's the same query every time, which is groovy, you can just use it right in the QueryDB function. Instead of that, what we have to do is we have to separate. We have to say the query is this string. The data payload is this dictionary. That function that exists in the MySQL connection takes those two, creates this nice, beautiful string for us, and we'll run that query. Okay? So the syntax for this is going to look a little funky. What we'll do is we'll say something like query equals a string, and we'll cut this, and we'll put it up here. We'll say query equals a string, insert into orders, first name, drink, created at, updated at, values. And I'm actually going to erase Talene for a second. I'm sorry, Talene. I'm going to erase your coffee for a second. But we know that a first name needs to go here. We know that a drink needs to go here. The now and the now can remain exactly the same. Those are groovy. That'll work. What we will do is a concept called string interpolation. And there's a couple ways to do this in Python. You've seen some of it in the platform from those things that were added on that Monday or Tuesday. There's a couple different ways to combine strings. You guys have heard of concatenation, right, which is just adding strings together. There's also something called interpolation, which is having a string and then placing values at specific sections inside of the string. We're going to be using interpolation. We're going to say, hey, here's a string. Let me put some values inside of it. Okay? But you have to use usually a specific pattern to the language to do that, to facilitate that. So in this language, in Python, in this form of string interpolation, this is what one of those little spaces look like. Percentage, open close parentheses, S. And inside of that, we will put a key. So a key I'll call fname. That'll be my key for now. You'll see where that other side comes from in a second. You'll see what corresponds with that. But then I had another one here. So that means I need another string, percentage, open close, S. And this was going to be the drink name, right? So I'll call it, first name and drink name.
Can you just do F strings?
You can do F strings too, but there's a specific reason we do this in terms of the PyMySQL, because there's an exploit called SQL injection. And SQL injection is the idea that we can, if we know that our server is using a SQL database, there are specific sequences of characters that we can use to essentially escape that previous statement and then to run our own statement. So this specific technique is used by the PyMySQL library to help mitigate SQL injection. The mogrify function does a little bit more work to try to stop us from using specific characters or to stop us from not properly escaping our strings. So yeah, there's a couple of different ways. You could potentially just take a raw string and concatenate it with the values, but it leaves you a little more open to SQL injection. By no means is this extensive and is going to completely protect you from SQL injection. I don't want to give you guys the wrong idea, but the mogrify function does a little bit more to secure us than using just a regular F string or something like that. Yeah. But ultimately, it's running a query that is a string. So yeah, and in that sense, yeah. So I have my query defined, and it looks almost exactly the same. It's a string now, and I have these little groups, fname, dname. Now I'm going to go ahead and create my data payload. What type of structure is this? Dictionary, right? At this point, guys, dictionary. Everyone. Open, close curlies, dictionary, right? Okay. Does anyone have a guess as to what my keys in my dictionary will be? If I told you this corresponds to the string, absolutely. F underscore name and D underscore name. In this way, when I call the function and when I send my string and my dictionary, it will know to find fname in the data dictionary and to put it there in the string. And it will know to find dname in the data dictionary and to put it there in the string. So you can call this whatever the heck you want. I don't care. But ultimately, the data dictionary you send along with it has to have the corresponding keys. Okay? Cool? Alrighty. So fname, where's the value for fname coming? Request.form, square bracket, first underscore name. Way back when we made our HTML, we called that input first underscore name. Hey guys, if I could just have you quiet down just a bit. Thank you. Way back then, we got this first underscore name on our input, right? The name is first name, okay? Where do you think dname is going to come from? At? Let's just double check, but I think we called it drink, right? Drink. So what's happening here is we're saying get the value of that immutable dictionary that came through when the form was submitted, right? Be it the first name or the drink, whatever it might be. Take that, put it in this dictionary. Then in a moment, we're going to combine it with this query to place those values in the actual query so that when we execute the query, it had variable data in it. Anytime you have variable data in a query, anytime it needs to change, you need to do this technique, the query and the data dictionary. So now, we already had MySQL. We can say MySQL dot what to run a query? Well, we already have that on line 15 in this function, right? So what was the other thing we did to actually run a query? Who can tell me the line number where we actually ran a query already?
Query DB.
Fantastic. What line number is that?
9.
9. We told it to run a query, right? If we want to run another query, are we going to write something different? Not really. We just say, hey, query the DB, the same way you did it earlier. The only difference is that now we'll send our query, which is what we did here, but we will also send what?
The data.
Data. Exactly that. And again, just to give you a sneak peek, this is expecting a query and an optional data dictionary. And then it basically tries to understand or send that data dictionary through to this mogrify function that exists in PyMySQL. But now we're saying once we've connected, we define a query, we define our data dictionary, we tell our SQL to query the DB with our query and our data, and then we return redirect. You guys want to test it out? Cool. All right. So, it's broken. You guys lied to me. It doesn't work. All right. All right, Chris, what do we got? What's your drink? What do you like from coffee? Ice. What's that? Ooh. Caramel iced. I haven't had a caramel macchiato in a long time. That sounds good. Add order. And boom, it just got added. It did not just get added to the bottom of the list. Don't think that. It got placed in the database. That's all that the function we just wrote, that's all that it did. It said, hey, take this data, put it into the database. Then what happened?
It was redirected back to
Then it was redirected back to index, and index is in charge of what?
all orders.
Displaying
Getting all of them from the database, right? All of them again, completely fresh, including that new one from the database. It is never ever me handing this to you or me handing this to you. It's me putting it here, and then you have to go and fetch it. You have to go and fetch it. Because you're both individually good at fetching the specific thing you need. I don't know what you want. I'm just going to put it there in the database. That's it. So now we have a way to create a drink, right? We have a way to display a drink. Our system is not that robust right now in that we can do something like this. We can add some values and then just hit add order. It doesn't need a drink name. Let's see if we can even do it without it. Yeah, so we can even do it without it. So we would put validations here, right? To make sure that, hey, don't allow the user to enter a drink if it's less than this many characters. But the last thing I want to do for now, because we're running low on time, is the delete function. Because delete is actually pretty simple. Now I'm going to challenge you guys to replicate this and then to also add the update functionality, okay? So right after we break here in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and create the groups. We have what, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So a group of 3 then, right? Okay, group of 3 and then 4 groups of 2. Cool? Everyone's sticking around for the full day today?
Yeah, of
I don't
course.
know what's going on.
Huh?
I don't have no idea. Just listen. He'll be in group of 3.
Well, you'll be in the group of 3 then. Fantastic. Thank you. Perfect. Well, group of 3 then. And we'll connect after this too. But that way you guys can struggle through this because I need you guys to do a favor or do me a favor. we've been kind of stratified up until this point. People have kind of just been doing their own thing, and that ends today. We are a cohort, and we need to do the same activities together, right? So we're going to be doing this today, struggling through it today, getting it done today, okay? No more. If I, just like yesterday, I was a little frustrated. I said X, Y, and Z, I need you all to do these 3 today, unless one person had finished it, and I only knew it was one person that had done it, and I think that only 2 people finished by the end of the day, and I don't think that it was because everyone had technical issues. I think people were just kind of doing their own thing yesterday. Okay, so we're all going to do this today, okay? Cool? All right, so let's do this delete. Now this is going to get a little funny for the delete because it's a new technique. But when I see the delete function here, right, when I see this delete, I'm not going to submit a form, I'm not going to do anything like that. I just want to hit a URL that is maybe /delete, right? That's all I'm thinking about doing, so let's make this /delete. Well, as soon as I do this, what do I need to do to my server?
No, you need a variable to do this.
One step at a time. One step at a time. You got the right idea. Let's just get there together. So we have a /delete, right? And then we needed, what did you say, Shazay? Yeah, we need to create a route, right? Or route if you're British. All right, and /delete. They call it a router instead of a router. Yeah, it's weird. I mean, it's not weird. It's different. All right, def deletes order, right? Okay, and let's just say print I'm gonna delete. So let's say that this deletes drink from DB. What should it do after it's finished deleting a single drink? Redirect, right? There's no point to this function rendering anything. Just say, hey, we're just gonna have it redirect. Return, redirect, boom. You'll typically find a lot more of your functions redirect than render. You have pretty much 3 or 4 main functions that'll be in charge of rendering things. Most of the other functions are processes that just kind of kick it back when they're done. Kick it back, back, back. So in this way, we can see I'm going to delete, and then we can return redirect. Okay, so let's test that out. Refreshing, and I blew up the server. Okay, going back, and clicking delete, 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 delete. I'm going to delete, I'm going to delete, I'm going to delete. But here's an interesting dilemma. Which drink do we want to delete? Right? I clicked a link. When I click this link, I wanted to delete Ben's drink. When I click this link, I wanted to delete Mice's drink, right? How can I facilitate that? Well, Justin actually had it right. We want to send some piece of information through the request to tell it, hey, delete this one or delete that one, right? So instead of just doing delete, wouldn't it be really nice if I could say delete /4 or delete /9? Delete /ID. Yeah, that's the number we're talking about. Let's try delete /ID. Will this work? Why not?
It's just the path name.
Okay. Well, how can I make this the real ID?
Plus order bracket.
Order at ID. Don't be scared that this is inside of a string. Everyone's going to lose their mind because it's not going to work. It's inside of a string, right? And yes, normal Python will not work that way. But your Jinja is running through and trying to find every single group of curly brackets, right? When it sees this group of curly brackets, just like it's all first name, just like it's all drink, it's going to turn this into the appropriate ID that we care about. So with this single change, if we refresh the page, you'll see way down there delete /1, delete /3, delete /4, delete /5, delete / the corresponding ID for this drink, right? Or this order. Okay. So this is one half of it. Now I have a way to click a link and tell my system which one I want to delete. But there is no delete /1 URL. There is no delete /6 URL. Okay, well let's make a delete /1. Okay. Is that going to work?
Triangle bracket ID.
Why won't this work?
Because we still need to send variable information.
I can't just make a million of these for a million drinks that might exist? That doesn't sound like fun?
That's what I did yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. That's what, I didn't know exactly that you did that, but that's the normal logical progression. I'll just make 15 of them. And then you realize, hey, Facebook, they have to make a billion routes? Probably not. They probably have the one that does it all. So instead of saying delete /1 or delete /6 or 9 or 7 or what have you, that was a 1, not a 7, we say delete /variable. And we can do a couple things. We can just say delete /ID, and this will work for us. And if we wanted to ensure that it was an integer, we can also say delete the integer that comes through that is the ID. This will work for the time being, just delete /id, but do I have to put this variable anywhere else?
Yes.
Their function.
In the actual function. And it is the same corresponding name. The ID here is the ID there, and vice versa. I'm not going to call this something that this isn't. They're the same. You can have multiple. You just put them multiple things here, and multiple groups up here. But in this way, I'm going to delete. Then let's print out the ID and see what we get. I'm going to delete 6. I'm going to delete 4. I'm going to delete 1. So now we have a couple things happening, right? We can click a link. This link obviously doesn't delete anything yet, but this link now informs the server about which entity to delete. This technique is URL parameters, and this is extremely common for enacting or acting on our entities, right? Because I know it's this entity or that entity. Update /7, update /15, update /15 confirm. You know, user /this, user /that. We will be doing this everywhere, all over the place. Okay? So it's two sides of it. It's the side from the HTML, making sure the proper data is there in the first place, and it's the side in the server to understand that link is hitting this endpoint. Cool? All right. So which one of these queries was our delete query?
That's one.
Okay, everyone should speak up for that because it's just this one.
Line 7.
Fantastic. Alrighty, so I know that that's my delete query, right? Let's just paste that right there. Delete from order is where ID is to. Now we have that same question. Is this a static query in that it will never change, or will this have variable data in it?
Variable data.
Yeah, what data fluctuates? ID. So with that in mind, do I have just the query syntax, or do I have to do the query and the data?
We have to line 16.
Query and the data. Fantastic. You pointed right back to the line where we had an example. Guys, that's all I want you to do. If you've done it once, you can do it again, right? Refer back to delete from orders where ID equals not 2, but what's the little group we make?
Percentage sign.
Percentage sign and parentheses F.
Yeah, percentage parentheses S, and then inside of that we can put a key, which we might as well call, you know, the ID or something. Again, just to differentiate a little bit. And now let's create my data little payload. What's my key going to be called?
The underscore ID.
The underscore ID, right? Because that's the corresponding piece.
Request.
Just like that was the corresponding piece, right?
Or actually, no.
It's simply ID at this point. It's not coming from the post or from the form. It's just coming from the ID that got sent to this function. And so now what do I need to do when I want to query my database? MySQL. Is it just right into the query? Do we have to do some other step first?
Now connects the server.
Got to connect again, right? So we can copy this line, the connect. We can do it here. We can do it at the top of this function, either way. But once we have it, you have MySQL. Then we can say MySQL dot. Sending it what? The query that we just created, right? What? The query that we just created, as well as the data dictionary right here, right? Cool? So when this runs, right, we're deleting from orders where the ID is some variable ID. I have no idea. And then data comes in and says, yo, I have the ID. The query_db function puts them together, makes a string, and then we can actually query the database. You guys ready to test it out?
Yep.
Delete, 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 delete. Looks like it works, right? And we can add a couple more. Add, add. Delete, delete, delete. We can delete them all. Delete this one too. Try to build in a testable manner, right? We didn't just test, hey, can I get all the information into this function, and can this function properly delete this thing right now from the database that I just set up? No. Tested every database query. We tested that we could get the ID into the function in the first place. We tested that we could connect to the database before that. We tested that we could then send the ID with that data to the database to actually delete it. Break these problems into small pieces, just like algorithms. The last thing we're going to do is conceptualize very quickly how we would do an update function, right? So an update function, let's consider that in my HTML, oh god, it's all bad. All right, in my HTML, along with the delete, I also want another action. So this TD will really consist of two things. And this will be a tag /update, okay? And we'll say update. Conceptual question. If I'm updating, just like I'm deleting, do I have to have a way to inform the server about which one I want to update? Yeah. Should I use the same syntax right here? Because I want to say update this thing or update that thing. So in that sense, actually I'll grab this, right? Update by ID, basically. We'll say update this. Okay. So when I get back here, I can see this. It's obviously going to break, but it says, hey, we're going to update 11. The normal segue, the normal process is update 11, right, would hit something that would produce a new page, that would actually render a page. The page showing the form data, right, showing all of our information. But let's think about that. For update, we'd actually have to have a couple stuff. We're going to kind of sudo real quick. Update / ID. Def update. Jesus. Okay, taking in the ID. This function really has to do a couple things. It would have to ultimately, what? Return redirect or return render? Return render. With a form, we had to do two things. We had to present the form and then submit the form, right? We had to present the add form via index rendering, then we had to have a process that actually submitted it and redirected. With the update, it's the same thing. We have to present a form for them to update the information, and then we have to have another process to actually submit the form to. So 2 steps. This is going to present our form. So if it's going to present our form, it's ultimately going to return render, and edit page. You're on, I was going to say MySpace, Jesus. You're on Facebook, right? And you click edit profile. It takes you to a form with all your information pre-filled, right? If all your information is pre-filled, first of all, that's the form we need to render. So we got that bit. But if all the information is pre-filled, where'd that information come from? So that means we need to do what here? This, again, this is not updating anything. This is just going to present the form. But if the information shown is from the database, what would we have to do? We'd have to query it, right? Query DB to get a specific order to show, right? Return, render, and edit page with the order selected, right? So what I mean to say is, Talene clicks edit profile. She's taken to a page that has a form with all of her information pre-filled, first name, last name, etc., right? We're clicking on an order to edit. It takes us to a form, which this function renders. And that function also needed that order's information, the first name and the drink. So we present it on that page. That's it for that route. But what other route would we need? The actual edit process, right? The one that's processing that form submission. 2 steps. Show the form, then submit the form. Add app.route. And we can say edit or update / confirm or something like that. Edit. I'm going to tell you this is probably also going to need the ID because it's probably also going to need to know which one we're editing. Def edit, taking in that ID. And if this one is the one that's processing the edit, ultimately it's going to what? Render or redirect? Yeah, this is going to return a redirect. Probably where? Probably back to index, right? I'd say it's appropriate to show the new things. Well, what's it going to have to do before that?
Edit the database.
Yeah, this is where we would query DB with update statement, right? We'd query the DB with our update statement right there. And would our update statement have variable data in it, or would it be static? Variable, which means we need to do what syntax? The query, comma, data technique. So this is where it gets a little tricky because every form you see is really 2 pieces. It's something that showed the form, and then it's something that handled the process. In this case, it's something to show the update form, but there's a little bit more work involved because it also needs to know which thing it's supposed to show. It needs to not show only a form, but a form pre-filled with data. Okay? So it'll be a little tricky for this part, but I'll kind of leave that up to you guys, okay? So give me, before we actually break, are there any last questions about the delete function, the read function, or the create function that we created? If this seems like a lot, I know it is. It's a decent amount of information. It's a decent amount of
It
tasks.
seems fine here, but when we try to run it, it always gives us errors. So that's when we'll find out.
That's when you guys will find out. Today's going to be a big struggle. So I'll end the video there.